Chestnut tree, how did you slip away from me? Just up and went without a hint. If you would fall away. Rejoice, rejoice, you live again. Welcome back, my honey friend. Never go away again. Lift your leafy arms and pray. Safe and free, oh chestnut tree. God bless this special day.
Friends, you can see more of this on our website, antinanka.org. There's a whole page dedicated to American chestnuts and lots of educational resources for kids and adults. I'm Olga Sher with Antinanka Earth Arts. I'm a managing director, and we are very blessed to be working with these trees this year. And we also started last year. We planted 25 of them. That was our first batch. And we also have Joseph Resch here. He's our project leader. Hi, Joe. And he will be telling us more about our work this year, and also about these wonderful trees and their importance in the ecosystem. And we are grateful to all of the volunteers who will be joining us in these efforts this fall. So a few things to keep in mind for now are the dates of the events, of the planting events. We have 3 of them coming up this fall. And I will bring up the dates on the screen so you can see them. They will be in New Jersey and Pennsylvania in September, and 2 events in November, September 28th, November 2nd, and November 16th. But we will talk about them a little more, and Joe will go over all of the work that we're planning. And please feel free to ask us any questions that you have. You can either turn your audio on, or there's a chat feature that you can use and just type in your questions. I will also post our email address that is specific to this project in the chat. So just make a note of it. You can always email us at that address and ask us questions or ask for additional information about the project and what's coming up. So thank you very much. I will let Joe tell us a little more about the trees and their history and the importance.
All right, hello everyone. Very happy to be here speaking about a tree that actually I have been inspired by most of my life. Funny story why is if anyone's ever grown up in a town in Pennsylvania and noticed like a street's been named Chestnut Street, there's quite a few of them around here. I actually grew up on Chestnut Street in a small town called Bangor, and it just made me wonder, where are these chestnut trees when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and everyone I asked didn't know what I was talking about. So that got the little curiosity bug going in my mind of, let me look into this a little bit. And as I got older and I learned more about it, I decided that it would be great to share as much as we can about this tree, because it is a tree that was once a great part of the forest here. 1 in 4 trees in our eastern forests were chestnut trees, so 25% roughly, and they're almost all the way wiped out by a blight that was accidentally introduced by people in the early 1900s. So I guess the first question is, what is a chestnut, and how are we going to know if we see one? Because we don't see them here every day anymore. So what I can tell you is that the American chestnut, is a member of the beech family, Agaceae, and its brothers and sisters that are also part of that family would be beech trees and also the oaks. And then we have one other tree that's very closely related to the American chestnut here, called the American Chinquapin, and that one is a much smaller tree. You might have seen on the opening video that the American chestnut reaches heights of up to 100 feet when it's able to grow to its maturity, and 15 feet wide. And so its smaller cousin here, the Chinquapin, gets maybe 20 feet and has a much smaller leaf. But oh, perfect.
Okay.
Pictures of the leaves. Yep, thank you for scrolling down. So the leaves of the American chestnut are elongated and toothed, and they're matte, so that means they're not shiny, not on either side. And that's an important distinguishing feature, because we do have some other types of chestnut trees that grow in other parts of the world, and some of them people have been planting here. Matter of fact, the Chinese chestnut is a very close relative to this tree, and that was a tree that was brought into the New York City area in the early 1900s, along with a blight that came by accident with it, and that's what actually wiped out our chestnuts in our forests. Now, the leaf on the Chinese chestnut is going to be much shinier, and the leaf normally isn't quite as long, and there are hairs on the visible hairs on the Chinese chestnut leaf. On the underside, mainly on the veins. Going to see some hairs on the stem also. But the American chestnut barely has any hairs visible. If any, there'll be a little bit on the veins on the bottom of the leaf, but they won't be very visible at all. Now, another distinguishing feature would be that the American chestnut has a totally different form to the tree. It's a tall timber tree. It grows fast and quick, gets as tall as it can, as fast as it can, and it's one of the fastest growing trees when it's able to. They can grow many feet per year. And the Chinese chestnut is going to be a much wider tree, not going to reach as much height, so maybe maximum maturity, it might get around 60 feet, whereas the American chestnut, as we know, could get 90, 100 feet if it's able to. So
based
little
on
bit
the
of a difference.
description of the leaves, it looks like the picture in the middle is the one. So I like how this site was designed. We can click on it and see. It will tell us if we're right or wrong.
Oh yeah,
A cool
I
little
think it's
view.
that one too.
Let's see what happens. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's the one. Should I scroll to the next screen now, Joe?
Sure. And I can show you actually, as you do that, a living example of an American chestnut leaf.
Oh wow.
You may see one of these in the woods if you're into hiking. A lot of times they'll come up as little sap shoots in the undergrowth from the trees that used to be here. Sometimes they still send little suckers up. This tree that's joining us is a little seedling from one of the few American chestnut trees that survived the blight and still produces nuts and has not been taken down yet. So
it looks beautiful and healthy.
Very healthy, and we're going to be planting this one at Columcille Park this fall, as a matter of fact. And our hope is that it's going to be just as blight resistant as its parent was, and I think we've got a fair chance of it. Not all of our trees.
So Joe, is this one a 2-year-old seedling? How old do you think it is?
That one seems to be about 1.5 years. It's grown pretty considerably since I got it in from the nursery. But that size is right in between a 1 and a 2 year. They do grow very fast. So for example,
just looking at the ones we planted last year, it seems that they are getting lots of height just in a year, not even a year, yeah.
Yeah, it's been, 6 months, 8 months since we planted them, and some of them are doing better than others. Of course, there's many factors. A few rodents chewed on some of them. Some already have some blight that they're dealing with, and some actually healed it since we were dealing with possibly resistant hybrids that we planted. And some of them are just going, I think, about as tall as me. 6 feet was our tallest one, from a similar height to what I just showed you. So
Incredible.
that's 5 feet in less than a year of optimum growth.
So
And
friends,
just
just
imagine.
to digress for a second, we also keep a growth chart on the website. It's not on this page, but on the main page, and I can show you really quick, if it's okay, Joe.
Sure.
Just to show you where all of the data is located. So we monitor them and we record our findings in this growth chart report, and we also invite all of you and the children and the community who will be planting the trees with us and visiting them later on to record the observations and send them to us, because this stuff is super valuable. So it's this tab here, growth progress report. If you open it up, it will open an Excel spreadsheet. I will not do it now because it will just mess up our slide share with Zoom. But this is the place where you can monitor closely what is happening with all of the trees that we're planting. Sorry for interrupting with this.
Uh-oh.
Okay, you can.
Olga, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me? Joe?
Oh, there you are.
Okay, I just lost my
You for a
connection for
moment
some
there.
reason for a second. Yeah, you can continue. I just wanted to mention that for a minute.
All right, awesome. And on that note, with the data collection, the really fun thing that we did with the kids and the adults that planted with us last fall is everyone who planted a tree got to name the tree. And that could be, you know, a pet's name or someone that's special to them or just whatever they thought of that was inspirational, you know. And so then we ended up with all of these different names for our 25 trees, and we can track the progress under each name. So when I plant my tree named Arnold, then, you know, Arnold is 28 inches tall this time, and oh no, Arnold has a spot of light on him in the fall. Is it going to heal? And we'll watch it. Or someone sees a caterpillar eating a leaf, and maybe we can identify it on one of the other trees. That's the data that we're collecting, and we kind of make it personal for whoever plants the tree, that we have an individual name. And since we're going to be planting at public parks, like Columcille Park is open to the public year-round, and I know the park in Bud Lake, the South Branch Preserve, they are going to, I think, be open year-round also for hiking and, you know, nature activities.
I believe so.
So if someone's in the area who's interested or helped planted, it would be, you know, easy to take a peek, check on the tree, and if you say, oh my goodness, something's going on, we should let everyone know. Definitely let us know through the email address that Olga will give us later. So on the trees again, I think we covered the identification of the American chestnut versus the Chinese. The Chinese has a shinier leaf, it's a bit smaller, just to review, and the American has the much longer canoe-shaped leaf and very deep teeth on the edge of it. Now the buds are a little bit different on the trees also. Olga, which one of these do you think is the American chestnut, since we have the twigs on the screen?
Is it the one on the very left? This one?
Let's see.
Okay, I'm gonna click on it now. Oh no, it's an oak twig. I was wrong.
And that's a good note about the multiple buds on the top of the twig. The oaks tend to do that more, whereas the chestnuts, They have alternate leaf spacing, but they're normally, that means the buds are going to be alternately spaced on the twig as well. And they are going to be a bit more space in between them. They don't normally cluster up.
So then it should be this one. I mean, I know the coloring already. So that was one of the factors that led me to that, to pick
Yes,
that.
and you know what? They are very closely related. They're in the same family, the oaks and the chestnuts, so you will notice some similarities in the bark of the tree and the twigs. There are little differences, like with the Chinese chestnut to the American. The American gets a little bit more of a brown to chestnut color at times, whereas the Chinese can be a bit more pale. So subtle differences there.
Let's look at the bark now. I think that's our next slide too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at that. Some beautiful bark here. So, I see one that looks like a birch. I see one that looks like an oak and one that might be a chestnut. Let's see which one it is.
I will go for the one in the middle, I think. All right.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, another difference with these
Just
trees.
because the ridges are not so deep, this one, I think that's what made me go for this picture.
And that, actually, every tree that I've seen in the wild so far has had that smoother bark, especially when it's a younger age. And I've only ever seen a really deeply furrowed bark on an American chestnut in the pictures when, you know, someone posts something of like old chestnut grove where the trees were humongous, or there's someone on iNaturalist that identified an American chestnut and a mature one out in central Pennsylvania that was maybe 15 to 16 inches in diameter. And at that point, they start getting a little bit more furrowed, but for the most part, they stay smoother when they're younger.
And what about the Chinese chestnut? Is it similar? Is the bark similar?
I think it's pretty similar on the Chinese. I'm not sure if we could use the bark to be distinguisher on that. Oh, here we go. Here's the nuts. So these are 3 different species of trees nuts that are appearing here. Do we want to take a guess at it first, and then I can explain a little more?
Well, I kind of know each one of this, so it will be maybe someone. Alan, do you want to try? I'm not sure if Alan is listening or watching. So I think it's this one on the left. Yeah, this one looks like a black walnut, maybe.
I agree.
And hazelnut, I think.
Hazelnut, yep. I agree on that as well. So the chestnut grows in a spiny husk. So the shell on the outside of it has those sharp hairs that are pointy, and it'll have several nuts inside. The normally it's 2 or 3. The Chinese chestnut makes a little bit larger of a nut. The European chestnut, I think, does also. The American is a little bit smaller, but it is said to be much sweeter and better tasting. And the trees produce copious amounts of these, the burrs that contain the nuts in the early fall.
Beautiful. So
there we go.
This identification is a little trickier because they look kind of similar, right? horse chestnuts and American chestnuts. I know I was a little confused in the beginning picking horse chestnuts, not knowing that maybe they're not good to eat.
Oh, yeah.
You definitely want to look at the shell of it, right? Because once they are uh, out of the shell, it's hard to tell them apart.
Yes, definitely. Another little cheat that you can use to tell the difference is looking at the leaf if you're taking it from the tree, because the horse chestnut is going to have a palmate leaf where there's a stem and the leaves come off of it almost like a fan, since it's in that buckeye family, whereas the American chestnut will just be a single leaf that's very long with the teeth on the edge.
Good to know. Thank you. All right, and that's the end of our identification slide. I don't know if you had anything else to add on that. If not, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the history and the importance of the tree.
So I would say, starting with the importance of the tree, it has been a very valuable member of our eastern woodland ecosystem, and that's because there are so many critters that found bountiful food from this tree, and not just people. So starting even with the smallest, there were chestnut moths that used to feed exclusively on this tree, and those are all but extinct. And I believe there were chestnut weevils also. There were two species. One went totally extinct because it had no more food left, and the other learned how to eat other trees like oaks and things like that. Now, the nuts themselves are edible to people, to bears, wild turkey, the now extinct passenger pigeon that we used to have in North America. It was a staple food for them. And if you're familiar with those, there were just humongous flocks of thousands of birds. And these trees supported that, plus all of the other wildlife, plus making enough nuts for people who are indigenous here to collect and make flour and bread out of, and also for the early settlers to come here, and they would collect the nuts from the mountains and bring them to market. And that was actually a pretty large industry in the probably more like the 1800s time period. So an important food, pretty much a staple. We've all but lost in our ecosystem here. We still have some oaks and hickories that make nuts, so the squirrels and the rodents are happy, and that might feed some deer and turkeys also. But really, I feel that we've lost one of the biggest sources of food in losing the chestnut's ability to produce that. So part of our mission here is to help bring that back to the ecosystem.
It really is a tremendous loss, and it makes me so happy that we have this chance to contribute a little bit of something that may reverse the situation. I think it's wonderful. So now for our dear volunteers who are so gracious in joining us, and we are planning to see many people and scout groups and youth groups. Lots of people emailed and expressed interest. So we're very, very happy to see that level of response. Can we just go over quickly what exactly we will be doing and what people can expect to see and to do when they show up on these planting dates? What maybe they should bring something, how long they can expect to stay, anything that you think is relevant, please share with us.
Okay, great. So the first stage of the plantings will be preparing the sites. And in order to do that, we're going to be clearing out some weeds, we're going to be clearing some brush, and ultimately digging holes. So you saw the size of the tree behind me. They're not huge trees. It's not like we're going to need, pickaxes and bulldozers and a giant hole. We're just going to make the hole a bit larger than the root ball and put the tree in and have the area cleared around it. But we're planting a good volume of trees, so 25 on average in each planting. We're doing 75 total, and that means the more hands that we have, the better, so we can get all of these trees into the ground. And we would love to, to have volunteers who are willing to help with the physical tasks in the beginning. And when we get to actual planting time, we're going to have some, lectures first on the ecosystem and on the chestnut, and then we'll be naming the trees, and hopefully the kids will be involved with this too, and planting them in the ground, watering them, and we are going to need to protect them also against deer and rodents. So we have tree tubes that we're going to be setting up. They are, you may have seen them in other places, kind of a plastic vinyl tube that's 5 feet tall and white. It's perforated with holes, and we will be strapping that to a stake. So the main physical part of this will be clearing the land where we're planting each tree, planting them, and then putting the stake and the deer guard around it to keep it from, being devoured when it's at a small size. And it's not going to take too long for the trees to get taller than that. They grow straight up through the tube, and then they can keep going or branch out at that point, and that just gets them up above the deer browsing level at that point. So we'll be using shovels. We might use a pick if there's a lot of rocks in the soil, but I think we'll be okay. We're going to be amending the soil at one of the plantings to acidify it, applying a granular fertilizer for that. And so I would say, other than hand tools, work gloves maybe, making sure you have some water. And I think that's all we're going to need for the physical part of it.
So again, we have 3 plantings coming up. September 28th, the weekend of September 28th. Then that one is in Pennsylvania, correct? And I'll bring up the dates again on the screen in a second. Then November 2nd is in New Jersey, and November 16th is again in Pennsylvania. And the November 16th planting is a part of our annual Reclamation of the Earthways celebration. So in addition to planting the trees, we will also be celebrating and having drum circles and presentations, ceremonies. So it will be beautiful, a weekend-long event. You can find more information on our website. And I just planted, and we're talking about planting, so that's on my mind already. I just shared the email address for all of the volunteers and youth groups who are interested. Friends, please make a note and share it with whoever you think may be interested to join us. The more the merrier. We would love to see everyone there. So each planting is a 2-day event, and on Fridays, right, Joe, before the plantings, we will be doing lots of hands-on work, digging holes and weeding and preparing the sites and having fun. And then on Saturdays, the day of the actual plantings, we will have educational presentations for kids. We will have some festivities, maybe potluck. Email us with any questions about these details. We'll be happy to respond right away and give you all of the information. I also posted the website for the project page. You can find a lot of stuff there as well. Let us know if you have any questions. I don't know, Joe, if you have anything else to add. If not, I will just bring up the screen again so you can make a note. This is on our website, antinanco.org, American Chestnut Trees. If you go on it, you can see the planting events. You click on the links, it takes you to the actual event on Facebook or on the site. That's how you can get all of the information on them. Everything is out there already. The events are free for volunteers. So welcome, friends.
And I think if I could maybe add a little bit about the trees that we're going to be planting, what they are and what the differences are, and
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
these guys are going to have a fighting chance, so we don't want to just replant an American chestnut tree if it's just going to die right away, which a lot of our trees have died. Some of them, well, I'm not saying ones that we've planted, none of them that we've planted have died yet. But the ones that we have in our forest have died to the ground, or they've been cut down and they're sprouting from the base. And then when they get to a certain size, the blight hits them and wipes them out down to the ground level again. So now we have these trees that will have a chance at actually growing to maturity or to a fruiting size and contributing to the forest in that way. And if the blight hits them, they should be able to heal over it. At least most of them should, because we're planting two groups of trees, hybrids and descendants from actual surviving American chestnut trees that exhibited resistance. And interestingly, a few of these trees we were able to get from a source that was inoculated with a hypovirus that weakens the blight itself. And so I didn't get into before what the blight actually is. It's a fungus, and it's, as symbiotic relationships go, it's a parasitic one on the tree. So it lives under the bark and it feeds from the nutrients that the tree is pumping up and down, the sugars and everything. But the bad part about it is that it can go and girdle the tree trunk or the branches and completely cut off the nutrient flow from what's above it. And that's why we have the whole trees dying. And now there has been a virus that people found and have inoculated some of the trees with that have the blight, and it actually weakens the blight a little bit so the tree can heal better. So that's one thing we have going in our favor in one group of the trees, and the other is the better genetics coming from a parent tree that has resistance. We should have some babies that have resistance. And then third is the hybrid, and to expand on that, the hybrid is a cross between the American chestnut and the Chinese chestnut. And that's important because the Chinese chestnut originally was the tree that brought the blight over here, and that's because it had lived with the blight, for hundreds or thousands of years before this in its native land, and it learned to grow with the blight and not be killed with it. So these trees can be infected, they can get cankers of blight on them, but they just keep growing over it and they keep on going. And so that's a trait that has been mixed in with the genetics of the American chestnut in this case. And there are some organizations that, especially one organization, the American Chestnut Society, Foundation, that is breeding extensively the Chinese chestnut with the American to the point where the trees will soon be 90% American and only 10% Chinese. So we get all of the characteristics of our native tree here, which the benefits of that over a Chinese are that it's a better timber tree and it gets taller. So that could help us not only with food, but also our industry here. But those are the trees that we're planting.
Thank you, Joe. The trees are wonderful, and I'm so happy we have this opportunity and also a chance to track the growth and all of the differences between the groups. We definitely have lots of hope in putting in lots of love and patience into them, so we're hopeful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And again, make a note of all of the information, the website, the emails. We're hoping to see you very soon. We're in our final stages of preparations, just getting everything together. And we will see you in September in Pennsylvania. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for your time. Blessings.
Thank you, everyone. Happy planting.